this is the first one, right? The second one you must have seen visibility, which is also a very minimal one. So if you see, we have tags like h1, h2, and then we have p tags and a body, right? And what we have set h2, so this is a convention of giving, like say when you want to reference, so under h2 you want to look for all the a tag and set the visibility as visible. But for h2, all the block elements you want to make visibility as hidden. So if you see h2 here, right, and with a class called b, right, it's all are hidden. So this will be hidden, it's not get printed out. But if you say if you just comment it out, you can see it's there, right? So this is like one more thing you might be seeing in D3JS graph. So how often it is used, like based on interactivity. So when you click on some element, you want to change the visibility to visible of some other element, so that might be the use case. So position and visibility. The third is color, which is nothing but like when you give color to any HTML element. So if you see, we have given a color here to the parent, right? So if you just change this to red, you can see it's a red. So it's just like a font color, whatever contained in the HTML element. Then similarly you have a background color. So right now you can see background color is similar, like nearly to the white. If you just change this background color to maybe black, okay, sorry, this is a border. So background color, if we add here background color, so this is a background color property in CSS. Then you have a padding. Okay, so to see the padding, let's see. So you can inspect element. So you can see here, so in Chrome it can show you the preview of how the margin padding for a specific HTML element is. So you can see there is a padding. Okay, now if you hover, you can see a padding is 20 pixel, right? And if you keep changing this, so padding will be keep updating. So that's a padding. So you have a padding left, top, right and bottom. If you give a one value, that will be applied to all the left, right, top, bottom. Otherwise you can give like a specific value to this, like, so it will start from left, top, and then you can give right. So you can give like 4 values also, right? So this is how like a padding attribute is. And then you have, okay, we'll cover SVG later. Then you have some hex color. So whenever you're building graph, I can suggest you to use something called flat UI color. So it has all the standard palette. So these are all the modern colors. So this is the hex value of it. You can use this hex value. So yeah, so mostly if you see all the modern web, they use this modern hex format. You can change to RGB also, but mostly people prefer to use hex. So that's just if you see the convention, so there are 3 ways to give. One is like, so if you see here, let's say we have a color red, right? So this is a value in terms of like color, like maybe a string value, red, white. But if you want to give a hex value, let's say you want to give this, so you can see, so this is the hex way of giving it. Then there is another thing called RGB. So inside RGB you can give like value. So it's, I think it's start with 255, right? So you can see, you can give it the RGB also, and you can change the value with the Chrome. So there are 3 ways to give the color value to any HTML element. One is a plain string value, another is hex value, and then is RGB. Then you have width and height, right, which is normally everybody knows. So any element has a width and height. You can so if you give, so if you don't give the width and height, the default it will take based on the content of the child. If you give the width and height, then it will be accordingly placed. Then you need to know about margin. So margin and border. So border, you can see we are using the property here. So it has, you have to give pixel, you have to give the pattern. So there are multiple ways. You can give solid, you can give transparent, you can give dot or dash, and then you can give the color of a border. So after that you have margins. So margin is also very simple. So if you have a, so what is margin? It's like when you want to position your block or the HTML element with respect to the neighbors. So if you have this parent, now it has a body, so with respect to body you can give the margin. So if you say margin top 100 pixel, so it will go down, and if you say 10, go up, right? So with respect to the body, so currently because we don't have any other neighbor element, we have a body, so it aligns with the body. So that's a margin. So you have margin top, margin left, right, or bottom, and you can give everything at once. So if you say margin like this, so this is like a 4 values. So this is like left, so these are the values: top, right, bottom, and left. So 300 pixel from the left, right? Simple. Then yeah, so then you have transform. This you might have used a lot. Let me show you example of transform. So this is a default. If you see this div element, you can see the height and width. We have given a very small height and width. Font size is also very small, padding is also very small. Now we want to scale this 20 times. So this is a syntax. You can give transform scale 20 times, so it will get scaled to 20 times. Just you refresh, now it's scaled to 20 times. So this is the one example for transform. You must have seen a lot other examples, like see the another one. So you have rotate also. So this is rotate, right? So I have given animation, but let me just remove this animation for now. Okay, so we have given 3 divs here, and we have set the background, height, width. We have given a display inline block. So what does it mean? Like all the divs will align inline to each and according to the neighbor div. So we have this div, then the second div will come adjacently, right? The third div will come adjacently. So that's why the inline block is. Then we have given a color, right? So this is the basic property, but if you see, you can just remove this also for now. Now if you see rotate 30 degree, so previously it was a square box. We are rotating this 30 degree by the center axis. So that is the one use case of transform. You don't need to understand keyframe animation because you will not use this in D3, but you will use transform, rotate property, and scale property, and there are some more. Okay, so I'll just stop this. So if you see, there is a skew. So what skew does, it just take this square, right, and skew it, right? Just move that square. You can see the shape, right? It's slightly transformed or slightly skewed by 20 degree, right? So that is the skew property. You might not use a lot this, or maybe but you need to understand, like with transform you can skew it, you can scale it, you can rotate it. And I think the last property of transform is this. So I'm just combining everything all together. So you have rotate x, rotate y, rotate z. So this is rotating with respect to x axis, and this is with respect to y axis. You can understand. So x axis is here, y axis is here, and z axis is like 3D. So it's coming out of the plane. Yes. So these are the different type of rotation. So if you see here, we are rotating x by 40 degree, rotate y by 40 degree, and rotate z by 100 degree. So don't focus on animation, but just understand like rotate x, y, and z. So how it rotates based on x axis, y axis, and z axis. Okay, any doubt in these properties? Okay, yeah, so very basic. So we don't have much in CSS. It's just like you will not see more than this, whatever we are discussing, like maybe translate, transform. Sorry. Okay, so then we have something called transform, right? So with transform you can do translate. So what is translate is you are moving the box, you're moving the HTML element by some pixels. So these are two static, and we have given a CSS class called moved, and we just transformed by translating it 10 pixel. So yeah, so this is like one of the other use case. So when so you might be using this when you're plotting a graph. You will have a use case for translate or transform for sure if you build some complex animated graph. Okay, now you have a property called fill. I will cover this property with the SVG, and these are all the properties we will cover in SVG. Okay, you should know about overflow. This is very important property of CSS. So there is a value called hidden. So when you give hidden and styling with overflow, then what happens, whatever is hiding. So if you see this div, if you just inspect, so this, you can see the image here, it is actually pretty the width is really more than that, the parent div, right? And when we get overflow hidden, then whatever is overflow, that will get hidden. Then we have auto. So if you see in auto, then everything will get transformed into the next line, and you will have this, right? So but what will be the issue with the scroll? If you see scrolling, right, it will do x-axis scrolling and y-axis scrolling. In auto, whatever is going outside the visibility, that will be gone. So that's the difference between auto and scroll. And hidden is it just hide everything, and visible is the default behavior. It will be like whatever is overflowing, that will be visible. So but if you see most of the code, you will find overflow auto. So whatever is overflowing, whatever is going outside, then that will be get hidden. So you will get the proper one. So you don't have the x-axis. You can see here you have x-axis scrolling, but here you don't have. So most of the people prefer to use overflow auto because you don't want to so whatever the HTML element are hidden or overriding, you should be handled properly. So making sure that should not be scrollable, because the user behavior will not be good. Yeah, so this is like overflow, and you already gone through top, right, left, bottom, which is like if you have this element, you have given a left, this is the top, and this is the right and bottom. So this is like very basic properties of CSS, and the only more important one is transform and translate, and then position is very important. Otherwise when you're drawing a graph, you will see some overlapping of your SVG plots, like maybe the SVG will be overlapping, or maybe some div element get overlapping. So if you make sure you are handling relative and absolute properly, then you will not have those issues. So maybe position is important, and the other property you will be using a lot, but they are not that hard to understand. Okay, so let me tell you now about SVGs. Okay, so let's me open this. Okay, so we want to plot kind of like two circles, some this SVG we want to plot. So now let's understand the code. So we have given a SVG. SVG is scalar vector graphics. First of all, like why SVG? Why not like to use other options? So if you see, you have other example like canvas, but what's the problem with the canvas is it takes time to re-render things, right? And it's so if you compare the performance between SVG and canvas, SVGs are better, and SVG work for most of the browser because it works really well with JavaScript and CSS and HTML, right? So you can do a lot more stuff, but with the canvas it's really complex in terms when you have to perform much more interactivity because it try to repaint everything. So what does it mean by repaint? So when you do some animation, you have an object moving on a canvas, then it has to repaint everything. But in SVG it is very efficient in terms of re-rendering and repainting, and it's a highly performance, and it work on most of the browsers compared to canvas. So that's where the D3JS started supporting SVGs instead of canvas. So all old libraries, if you say, which is used for visualization, they use canvas. A lot of people have built scalable graphs on canvas, but it requires a lot of code to do that because you need to write efficient JavaScript. So SVGs are very simple. So if you see, we have a SVG has some properties like view box. So what is view box is like you are giving the width and height, and this is like minimum x and minimum width and minimum height. So it can scale down from 0 to this height and width, and this is so basically SVGs are like following XML convention. If you already you're familiar with Java and other languages, then you must have seen the XML convention, which is more of like using tags. Similarly, we have SVG has some tag called group tag. So this is a G tag. So what the use of G tag is to group all the different what do you say, like the components all together. So you are grouping. So when you apply let's say properties on a group, then everything will apply to the child elements. So let's say we are giving a fill as white. So this circle and this circle has a fill white. So fill means you're filling the color inside. So if you change this to, let's say, blue, you can see it's blue, right? So this is the fill property, and you will see a lot usage of fill property. Then you have a stroke green. So stroke is this one, right? So this is a green, and you can also give the stroke width. So we're given a 5. If you want to make it thin, you can give, let's say, 1. Then you can see this will be thinner. So this is stroke width. So you need to define the boundaries, to define any boundary for the child elements. So instead of applying these properties on each and every child element, it's good to group it. So that's where we use grouping. So when you want to apply a common set of attributes or maybe the styling, you good to go with the grouping G element. If you see this circle, so circle tag, what it does, it has a center X and center Y. So this is the center. So how the center is defined? So the center is defined based on the page. Like it will go from left, center X here, and center Y here. So this is the center, and then you give the radius. Then it plot like this. And then similarly you have given center for second circle 60, 60. So it will go like 60 here and 60 here, and then you have a radius. So this is how you define the second element, right? And then you apply this. Let's say you don't apply the fill. What will happen? You can say everything is black, right? So default is black. If you don't give the property fill, then default will apply as black. So this is the basic example of SVG structure, and also you understand like why you use the group element. So you will see like every example of D3JS has SVG, and then we try to use sometime group, and then we put all the other HTML elements or SVG elements like circle or maybe other, like say rectangle, right? And we try to combine and push all together and apply the common set of attributes using the group elements. So that's the usage of group and SVG. Everybody understood this SVG, because this is really important for D3JS.
Yes, Saurabh.
Okay, Asta, Rupali.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sort of, but I have one doubt
Yeah.
that for these two circles, these are like overlapping circles,
Yes,
one
yes,
is
yes.
visiting on another, right? So
Yes.
one area is hidden.
Yes, this one, right?
So yes. So
Yeah.
how is that? How is this logic working?
So what happened? If you see, the browser, right, interpret every element by element. So it first plot this, right? If you, let's say, if you just comment that, right, you see the circle is there, right? Now now the browser will start rendering this circle attribute. So it goes like this, right? So if you see, and but it also knows that you have to fill with white. So when it plots, right, that fill will get applied, right? So that's where,
Yes.
yeah, that's where it's hidden. So yeah, so it's not overlapping per se, but what happen is this part get overridden by fill, and fill default is with the black, right? So that's where the reason is you cannot see this. Yeah. So whenever you want to like so you understand this, or maybe like any other code, just line by line, and you try to like comment out and see like what happens, or what is the default behavior if I don't do this, what will happen, right? So if in the bigger code base, if you see for D3JS, you have to understand that by following line by line. So what you do, you just remove all the code and try to execute line by line and see what's happening with the, like with the first step, and what's the execution on the screen. So that way it is very easy for you to understand how this entire plotting of SVG or other HTML elements works with the D3JS, or maybe in general with SVG. Okay, cool. So now we understood like how SVG works and why we use SVG, why not canvas. Let's see some other examples, some basic examples. So we can see some basic shapes. So if you see here, we have a rectangle, we have this slightly circled corners of a square. So so let's see first, like maybe I'll just maximize my fonts. So first we have given a SVG, we have given a width and height, we have given a version, and this is like a standard format to plot SVG. Now why we are giving, somebody can ask me like why the version is, because when you render it on a browser, the browser will understand like what kind of convention you need to follow. Now the first element is rectangle, which we denote with the help of rect. So this is x and y. So what is x and y? This is like a position. So x is like, say here you see the center, this is 10 and this is 10. So every element is plotted based on the reference from the top left. So this is your coordinates will start from here, from this corner. So 10 comma 10 is the center. Then you have given a height, and you've given a width and height. You've given a stroke black, so the corners will look like black, and you have filled with transparent, and the width you have given 5. Very simple, right? Rectangle to understand. In the second one, what we have given is rx and ry, which is basically the radius for this, right? So it becomes like so this is like a I think, let me just tell you exactly what does it mean. Rx, yeah. So what do we call this? So it's called x radius. Yeah, x radius and y radius. So we are given a x radius and y radius for this circle. So for this square, so it look like this shape. Similarly circle, so every circle, every standard uh, like shapes are very simple. Like you have to give the center, you have to give the radius, you give the stroke, and you fill with the color. That's how it is. Similarly circle, similarly ellipse. Now line, you give the coordinate, the starting coordinate and the ending coordinate. Now you know with the basic mathematics, to plot a slope we need two coordinates, right? x1 y1 and y2 x2. So similarly you have x1 y1 and x2 y2. So that's why it goes like this. So you can see the line. And ellipse is also very simple, center x, center y, then you give the rx and ry, right? So if you see what is rx, this is the radius around the center, around the x-axis, and ry is the radius around the y-axis, which is smaller, which is 5 here. So very simple to understand the rectangle and circle ellipse. Line is also very easy to understand. It's just like you need 2 points. One is this x1 and x2, another is y1 and y2. So this one is x1 and x2. So if you see 10 comma 50, right? So 10 is here, right, and 50 is here. So if I decrease this, let's make this, instead of 50, let me make it as 25, and you can see it goes here. Just so I think so it takes the reference with respect to the left and the top. So 10 and 50, so 10 is this, right? Yeah, so it's like x1 comma y1, not x2 y2. So that was, I was wrong. So it's x1 comma y1 and x2 comma y2. So these two coordinates define the line. But if you see another example of polyline, so you can see polyline is 60, 1, 1, 10. So how we define these points? So there are multiple points we're defining. So you can take with a combination of 2. So 60 comma 110 is 1 point, and then 65 comma 120 is another point. So 60 comma 110, then you can see 65. So we are increasing x here and we are increasing y here by 5, right? So similarly then the next one, 70 and 115. So if you see 70, we are going here, and 115 is here, right? So that's where the zigzag plot is working with the help of this polyline. So polyline, we give the coordinates just an array, but if you see the two consecutive elements or the values, it define the coordinates of the consecutive points. So this is the first point is 60 comma 110, the second point is 65 comma 120, and then similarly we give the stroke, fill and width just to make it more visible and appealing. So this is polyline. Then you have a polygon. Polygon also works in the same way. So you have these coordinates, so you can see this coordinate, but it get filled up. So the difference between polyline and polygon is used mostly for the closed shape, or mostly to stroke, mostly to create like any closed shape. Yeah, you can say mostly any closed shape. So you just need to give points, right? Now you might be questioning like how we can define this, like how we should come up with these points. So this is depending upon your use case and your values. So you don't necessarily plot this, but when you're plotting, let's say, graph with some random values where you have x and y, in that case it will draw so depending on the use case you will use polygon. And so bar graph is also a polygon, right? It's a closed polygon. So if you fill every like maybe if you define in such a way all the points, it can create a bar graph. Like the pie chart can be a polygon. But polyline you can use for like trends in general, like where you define, so when there's a relation between all the points all together, then you can use polygon. And polyline is like when you plot like individual, when you take the data points individually. So if you see this data point has some meaning, this data point has some meaning in the graph, but in terms of polygon, I think everything all together will depict something. So that's where like the polygon shape will comes into picture in your D3JS. So this is like more of analogy, like when to use polygon and when to use polyline. So but if you see more in general, you don't use these shapes. You mostly prefer to use path because this is very flexible. The path will help you to plot anything. So path can help you plot like any curve or any sort of graphs. So I can show you the example of path in this. So let me open this. Okay. So path is more important one compared to this, because this is very standard: rectangle, ellipse, line, polyline. Polygon also is very straightforward, but the path is, you need to know something called M, what is M, what is L, and what is Z. So first we have given a SVG, standard way, we have given a height and width. Now we are plotting with this called D. D means like direction. So you can see M is stand for move 150, 0. That means you have to move x-axis by 150, and with the y it should be 0. So you are here, right? Then you have L, right? So you have to draw a line up to the point 75, 200. So this is the coordinate. So 75 is x and y is 200. So you draw the line. So that's where it draws the line. Let's see, if you just remove this part, what happens? Nothing will happen because it's not a closed shape, right? So you need to do this, or let me do only Z, then also you will have nothing, because we need to stroke something, we need a closed shape. So this is very simple. So you move 150, 0, and then you draw a line up to the coordinate 75, 200, and then you draw another line to the coordinate called 225 to 200, right here. And then what you do, you just close. So Z means it's an end. So what it does basically, Z, it try to close the shape, right? So from wherever we start, it close the shape. And then yeah, so default the fill color for this path is black, so that's where we are showing black. If you change maybe here, if we can use this fill, yeah, if we, let's say, if we make it as transparent, yeah, say transparent, but let's make it blue, so it's blue. Yeah, so that's how this work. So it's a direction and then move the left. So you mostly use this, you can plot like any graph or any you can say like any curve with the help of this direction. You can just first move, and then you can draw a line, and then you can move, then you can draw a line, right? So there are few other properties which you must have seen, like shape rendering. I can show you another example, this one. Okay, so there is a property called shape rendering, right, which is a CSS property. It is called crisp edges and auto, right? So you cannot find much difference. So if you see, we have two paths, so we are using this rod, right? The first one we are using crisp edges, another one is auto. So what is the use of shape rendering? It is basically telling a rendering engine to align the render according to the given value. So auto means the default behavior. The crisp edges, it should be like the edges should be crisp. That's the only difference. So you cannot see, you cannot notice much more difference, but if you see at pixel level, there is a difference. There is a difference. So there is something called optimize speed. There is another property for shape rendering which is optimize speed. So what is the use case, what's the like meaning of that is, so whenever we build some animation, we want to give the optimized speed, because when we are animating an SVG object, then we want to give optimized speed. But whenever we are just plotting it like with the sharp edges, then you can give crisp edges. If we have just a normal behavior, then we can say shape rendering auto. So that's a property. So it doesn't do much in terms of a UI, but it helps the rendering engine to know how to render it for a specific use case. So how we are using SVG, based on that it does the rendering. So this is, you must be seeing in one of the example which you have shared, like shape rendering in CSS. So shape rendering was auto, right? So yeah, that is one of the important property to know. And similarly, if you see, this path is basically used, you move it to 80 and 30, and then you draw a line from 100 to 100, right? So that's how you are plotting this path, right? And then you've given a stroke value, so that's why it is thickness, you can see the visibility. So you have this, and this we have seen. There's another example. Okay, let me show you one more example of SVG. Okay, this one. So first we have given a version, base profile, width and height, and so we follow the standard convention. Then we have created a rectangle with the width and height, and we filled everything with a red color, right? So this is the rectangle. Now how we are aligning circle inside, you can see with the center X and center Y, we align this inside this rectangle, and then we fill it with the color, and we have given a radius. Now we have a text. So similarly, with the text we can move to X and Y. So what happened, the starting position of text will be this, right? So, and then you've given a font size, text anchor middle, right? So what is the meaning of text anchor? So this is, let me show you. I think I do have an example for this. Okay. Let me show you text anchor. So there is three ways: left, middle, right. Yes. So you can see we have given a text as A, and anchor as start, middle and end. So what is the meaning of it? If you see the first one, we have given a start. So text anchor is here. So whatever you give the content, it will start after this anchor. When you say middle, then anchor, the text will come according to this. So the text will be aligned with the middle of your text anchor. Similarly, if you give the end, so it will align here. So for the end it goes to the left, and for middle it will be in the middle, and for the start it goes to the right. So this is just like you are trying to position. So you must see this text anchor also in your examples, but it's nothing, it's just a basic one. So when you want to plot some D3JS graph, and you want to add some text according to your graph, so sometime you want on the right side of it or left side of it, so that's the use case. Yeah, so basically you understand like how SVG works, what's the use of group element, and how these other small properties like fill, stroke width help us to visualize the elements of SVGs, different shapes. So you know circle, how it works, rectangle, polyline, polygraph, path, and then also like how to align based on the text anchor. So I think this is the basics of SVG. I think I've covered mostly everything in SVG. Yeah. So you will see, like, whenever we create a D3JS graph, we start creating first SVG, and then we try to create a group element, and then we start adding div, and we associate all the different attributes like CSS styling. So most of the CSS or attributes we used to give in JavaScript code itself. So that's why there is a lot of chaining you must have seen. So when you have an element, you associate like CSS with the property or with the method called style. So where you pass your attribute and you pass the value of it. So in D3JS. So I think this is required for like you to know basic HTML and some of the SVG components, and then also CSS. So in CSS we cover like all the basic styling properties. I think position is one of the most important one. Transform, translate for the animation, and then SVG related CSS properties like stroke width, stroke opacity, and stroke rendering. So I think that's all is there for the CSS and HTML. I think we are good to go to start with D3JS now. So do you have any doubt? So, okay, let's start one by one. Ganesh.
Sort of no. From now on, so no many doubts with so whichever you explained.
Yeah, so you understand SVG completely, right?
Yeah, yeah. I don't. It's about how much the practice.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll have to go through your class again and then practice because I've already read about the SVG
Mm-hmm.
prior to working in D3, so I have some of the knowledge now. And then I think I'll have to again go through what you have explained,
Okay.
the details of SVG in detail.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm good with this concept.
Okay, wonderful. And what about Rupali?
Yeah, me too, Saurabh. I'm also understanding everything perfectly which you're explaining.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know that we haven't in these codes we haven't incorporated D3JS, right? Till now.
No,
We
no,
are
no.
just we are writing everything in HTML5, and then even the SVG code is written under the HTML tag, right?
Yeah, this
Because
is
in
yeah, this is just a sample. This is just a sample. So
okay,
so this is not we have not started D3JS yet. So if you see, let me show you. So if you see the classroom, so the topic we decided JavaScript for D3, which we have covered yesterday, and then HTML5 and CSS3 for D3. So then we will
right,
start D3JS fundamental, right? And we will cover everything with an examples, and yeah. So that's where we will set up our own server. We so depending upon if you're using, so I'm using Mac, so I have a MAMP. So we'll use the Apache server to render the graph. So mostly to read the, so maybe we will start slowly, but yeah, we will use server setup instead of plain D3JS. Asta, do you have any doubt? Everything is clear?
Yeah, sorry, it's clear. I think once I do the hands-on, I'll be more confident. But yeah, I'm understanding what you're explaining.
Yeah. So you need to go through the SVG a little more. Just practice. Maybe if you do some hands-on practice, keep editing those elements and see like how it works. Then you will have a easy time to understand D3JS graphs. So I will share few resources for you to go through SVGs, mostly like Mozilla blogs. So just read that article, and maybe if you have any doubt, we can catch up again and to discuss this. So let's make sure whatever we discussed so far, considering the JavaScript, HTML5 and CSS3, everything should be very clear before starting D3JS, because you will find really simple, like the code which you have pinged me like when we started discussing. I think that code looks very simple for you to, I think let me share you the code. I think this is the one. The one was this, right? So if you see, the code is very simple. It should take like hardly 5 minutes to understand this. So we will walk through.
Yeah, sorry. This code is very easy. I mean, there's
Yeah,
nothing to worry about this code. It's
yeah.
like very
And I think there is one more thing. I think this is the
it
one.
it actually gets tough when we downloaded this code, because this is
Hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
JavaScript notebook only. It looks simple here, but when we tried to download it and read that,
Mm-hmm.
we were actually facing a lot of we were unable. I was unable to understand it clearly, because
Okay.
here we can read line by line and we can
Mm-hmm.
think of it.
Yeah.
But when we downloaded it, it also gave the observable code.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll try to. So whatever you see here, mostly like this is like a smaller one. There is one more graph which I think Astha has shared. I forgot the name. Do you know, Astha, what was the graph name?
One sec.
Yeah, I think that one was interesting.
Saurav, I have a query here.
Hmm.
Do we need to learn React for this? React
No,
or here we have something called React, right? No.
no, 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 no.
So, no, it was just a doubt because I was going through some material and they said, I mean, if you want to deploy it as a dashboard, you need React. So, I just didn't understand. Thought I'll ask.
No, no, no. You don't need to know like React. I think basic uh, language is enough. You know HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So basically, it's like JavaScript, right? So
Yeah.
JavaScript can work anywhere. See why React when you want to. So what they have mentioned is when you are integrating with some other application, then you need some framework. Then you need Vue.js, React. So if you're not integrating with just like a dashboard, then it's fine. So if you see here right now, if this graph you want to plot, you don't need anything else. You can do with HTML, CSS, JavaScript. But when you want to build like dashboard, some like you want to take input from user and you want to update database, right? So some user interactivity is there. Then you need React or Vue. So, but just for the practice or for now, you don't need. But in future, if somebody will ask you, right, they will have their own developers to build a framework for you, like the React front end for you to integrate. So then it's nothing. It's just like you will write the same code, and you can give it to them, and they can integrate it. So they will push that HTML code inside their view.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just like one component, dashboard component, which will have some view component, and you will have some. There is a concept called model view controller architecture. So you will have some view, which is like the front end, and you will push your HTMLs and CSS there. So that's how. So you don't need to worry about it. I think that should not be your job as a data analytics. You should not be worry about it.
Okay.
Any
So the earlier one was double vertical DP with labels.
Yeah, I didn't get
And
what you mentioned. Can you just repeat?
Double vertical.
Can you repeat, Asta? I think there was some communication problem. No,
So double vertical DP with labels.
double vertical. Okay, let me see. Double. I think this one.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this one also is not very hard. So it looks really complex because of the data. See, this plotting is happening because of the data, because the way the data was given. But now you should be able to understand the CSS and
yeah, it's just that we'll have
and
to input the data here. I think this is more of like a hierarchical algorithm.
yes, and this is like purely like a for each method. So you're iterating like every value, and maybe you can write better code than this. So few of the things, yeah, you can write it in a better way. But how to think the different aspects, I will let you know. So this should looks very simple. So how to visualize like with this, how to come up to the conclusion that you have to write some set like this specific type of code. Yeah, so transform, translate. So this is like translate around x and y. That's why you're giving two values. And yeah, so basically just to add some animation, and this is like attribute class header. So instead of writing in HTML, you're creating HTML with the help of JavaScript. So that's why you're giving the attribute, you're giving the text, and you define the colors here. That will be helpful for you to reuse dynamically. That's why it is a key value pair. So you understand this is an object or dictionary. So whenever this elite comes, the color will become this, right? Because you have the data. So yeah, and this is how you do. Yeah, we will see. Like I will not get into much more detail, but you will see like this is very like cakewalk for you to understand. Once we do like I think 3 classes, I think that should be enough.
So, Saurabh, I mean, if you want a dashboards like which we build in a Tableau, right? I mean, kind of a complex dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so can that be? I mean, can we achieve that using GPA as well? I mean, same complexity like we have a line chart, and then you have a bar chart. You have
Mm-hmm.
different sort of charts into the same. Because we have done it. Me and Rupal have worked on the one chart. It's a simple dashboard,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a bar chart, and line chart. Okay, but the data was fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
We had it up on
Can you show me those charts? Like if you have, can you just take a screenshot or maybe just record a video of it and send me? So I will try to consider like this is, or just share
So
me
I
like.
mean, yeah, I'll share with you right now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, if you can share your screen, let me stop.
yeah, I'll share my screen. I'll share my screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this is the dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at it, right?
Yeah, yeah, I can see.
So this marks the overall percentage of CPA. When I hover over this particular
Yeah.
CPA, it gives me what percentage. But this is manual. This is hard coded. Okay, I have interpreted this number. I mean, Ravali has given me this numbers, and then I had to incorporate into this.
Mm-hmm.
This shows me what are the different portfolios it is having,
Mm-hmm.
and what the revenue it is generating for this particular portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And over these points, it shows me in the month of July how much revenue, I mean, what is the revenue of that particular the CPA. So this is how we have built. This is a very normal chart, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is a very, very normal chart,
Yes, yes.
or very basic one, I could say. So here, if I see the data is like very minimal. I don't have done anything. I mean, over here, but the data was like very normal. So he has given the line chart, and he has given the SVG, he has declared the variables and all this stuff. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So what if I render lots of data into this and then start building this sort of a dashboard? That
Mm-hmm.
will be easy for us to do.
And sort of adding to that,
Yeah.
here that particular word, the data was in the form of dictionary itself.
Yeah, yeah.
And we just called that particular object where the data was
Yeah.
residing. But in actual scenarios, the data is residing in the data warehouse, like
Mm-hmm.
Teradata.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
how do we integrate that with DP?
Yeah, so there's multiple ways. So one is like when you're reading from your like say data store, right? So you don't necessarily read uh, in D3JS. So you have to, let's say, build some other pipeline. Let's say you will read your from Python, right? And you will be creating those CSV, because CSV is just like key value pair storage, similar kind of key value storage. So you can read from CSV with a D3JS. So you read your data from Python, and that service will just so because you read from data source, and you can create a common storage for your dashboard to read the data. So that can be like keep updating, so a graph will be keep updating. So that's a location. So in production you don't necessarily to be a file location, it should be like a S3 or any other bucket. So you read it from there from D3JS, but creation of those files, CSV files, should be done with the help of other technology, like say Python is can be one of the use case. So do you have to have, or maybe other, the Node.js is also suitable for this, but you need to learn like then other framework but Python is very easy to do that. So you can read from data source and create.
It can be a JSON file also, no? I mean,
Yeah, it can be like
in
anything.
Python.
Just as you can create in any format. It can be in CSV, it can be in a JSON, so it can be in any format. So mostly like why CSV is because it's CSV parser is compared to like JSON parser in D3. If you have bigger objects, you can use CSV, but if you have a smaller object, you can use JSON. But JSON is object representation, but when you read the file in CSV, you can read in chunks. So the advantage of CSV, you can read in chunks.
So Saurav, would we be covering the jQuery as well, jQuery and JSON, or do we need to study jQuery and
No,
JSON?
no. Yeah. So you understand JavaScript, right? Now, very similar. What like extra thing you will have mostly in jQuery is like instead of document you will use dollar, right? So you don't need to necessarily learn jQuery. It is not. It should not be that hard for you to adapt if you understand JavaScript very well, because whenever you write an event, you pass the event name and you pass the handler, right? The same thing you do it in jQuery, but instead of writing the add event listener, you will say dollar dot like click, and then you define your functions, right? You pass the methods, so the convention is almost same, and the behavior is also same. Nothing much difference. So for you it should not be very hard to adopt if you are really good in basics of JavaScript fundamentals, that I can say. So don't worry about that. And JSON is nothing, it's just like object representation, a key value pair. It can be nested, it can be plain, so there is nothing to learn in JSON.
Okay. What about jQuery? That is not much complicated,
Yeah,
right?
it's not complicated. Like if you are really good in JavaScript, you take like really like maybe it's a 1 day job for you to learn jQuery. And whatever is required in D3JS, not even a day. So you can say maybe 3-4 hours are enough.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We can see like if you find some any examples, I can walk you through along the way with the jQuery one, but don't worry about it. You don't need to necessarily know the entire jQuery, but jQuery has a lot more things. You have like Ajax and Post. You don't need
Yeah,
those
yeah.
kind of things.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Any other question, Ganesh?
Nothing much, Saurav.
Okay.
Noted for tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, sure. And yeah, Asta.
No, no question.
Okay, yeah, Rupali.
No questions.
Okay, perfect. So I think we don't have like much to discuss in HTML5 CSS3 for D3JS today. So this is enough, but maybe tomorrow we'll try to cover. So tomorrow I don't see like tomorrow we can do that. Maybe Friday we can catch up the same time. And meantime you try
Yes,
to.
we can also do that.
Yes, yeah. So take some time. Make sure like whatever we have done, so you have some strong holding, and maybe you can help Rajendra also in the meantime, so he can also catch up. So before we start D3JS. So let's see. Let me know whether Friday is suitable for you to catch up, because we have like 4 to 5 session next. So we can plan like maybe this week and one this week and maybe then the next week. So by end of the next week you will be good enough in D3JS.
So
Okay.
the files you shared now,
Mm-hmm.
that is not opening the
Oh,
folder. I mean, the Ninja Basic is there, but
I
I
got
can't
it.
see the
I
file.
I got it. The problem is WhatsApp is scanning those files, and it when it finds the JS, it thinks like this is some kind of virus. So let me. I'm just uploading
Just
some.
drop an email only then.
Yes. So I'm uploading all the files, and let me just make it public. Share. Okay. And can you tell me your email? So can you tell me the email address? Maybe just ping in a chat.
Yes.
Yeah, here. Everybody can ping. I'll just share with everyone. And if you know Rajendra email address, that will be great. I will add him as well. Okay, so I have shared with Rupali. And okay, Ganesh. And then Asta. Okay, once you get it, you can share with Rajendra as well. Yeah, I've shared with everyone.
Okay, I've shared this Rajendra's email ID as well, Samay.
Okay, let me check. Yeah, now everybody has access. Okay, cool. Then thank you guys. See you then next time.
Oh, thank you, Saurabh.
Thanks,
Thank you so
thanks,
much.
Saurabh.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.
Mm-hmm.